Welcome to Wisdom Unleashed. It's your host, Christian McCrae Stewart. On today's episode of Wisdom Unleashed, we're going to be discussing partiality. Don't become what you claim to despise. Good day, everyone. Welcome in. Let's go ahead and jump into our topic today. We're going to be discussing partiality. Okay, and so just to lay the foundation, what does partiality even mean? Like what does it mean? What does it look like? Well, the thing about it, partiality is unfair bias in favor of one thing or person compared with another. It's basically favoritism. Now, the thing about favoritism is, I think for the most part, as a general, people agree, we shouldn't favor people. One person shouldn't be favored over the other. However, even so, we tend to favor those who look like us and talk like us. You begin to just have a certain camaraderie, if you will, with those who, when you see them, you kind of see yourself. Or when you speak, they have the same vernacular. But the thing is, we might treat people differently based on a number of various reasons. The number one reason that we all know, the history books even discuss it, is race. You also have gender, economic status, political party, intelligence, etc. All these things, but it's like, these are not really basis for us to treat people different than what they should, humanly be treated. Treat people the way that you want to be treated, regardless of their status, regardless of where they come from. But we see it time and time again. Now, let me make this note. We all have biases, right? We all have a concept or a thought or perception that we have formulated in our head about a particular group of people, how someone may look, and based on that look, how they may act. That happens, and that is natural. It's not to say that the biases that we have are wrong, but how we act upon them can produce an action that is wrong. And that's what we have to learn. And the thing about it, when we talk about biases, we discuss this all the time in the legal arena, especially when you're dealing with criminal cases and you're having to go and you pick juries. You're trying to determine what people think inside, those underlying thoughts that you don't necessarily see when you're looking on the outside appearance. And to get to the point to recognize, yes, we have biases and it's not innately wrong, but how do you utilize that in your actions? How do you utilize that in your words? How do you utilize that as you're interacting with individuals? Okay. But with that, as you all know, we come from the biblical standpoint. We're using the wisdom of God's word to help us navigate the life that we can be transformed, right? And so James 2:9 says, but if you show partiality, you are committing sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. God is not a God of partiality. He does not show partiality. God is impartial. He is not a respecter of men, because for one, he created all things. How we are born at birth and the attributes that we have. God knew those things before he created us, and God doesn't use those things against us. However, we are in this sinful, fallen world, and partiality is more prevalent than ever. But this is the thing. When we see partiality taking place in our society, in our world, and you kind of have that gut feeling like this is not right. How could individuals do this? Or how do we take that, how do people take that position to treat another human being as though they're not worthy of something? Who gave you that right to do so? And I think that is a fair reaction. The problem, from my perspective, from my point of view, is that in the midst of having that natural reaction, that's not wrong, that's not right. No one is better than the next person. But then in your actions, your words, and your deeds, you become the same thing that you claim to despise. You begin to speak the same hatred. You begin to present things in a way that will cause others to look at a particular group of people, or an single individual in a certain light. But you taking the position that this is not right, this is not fair. And so how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that? And this is the thing. I mean, let's break it down. We know that the greatest form of partiality that has taken place in our society is slavery. When you had individuals, white individuals, who weaponized the Bible for their own benefit, to take the position as though those of African American descent were less than. And we know that that's far from the truth. Now, slavery has taken place over 400 years ago, but in today's society, we still see the residue, if you will, of racism. We still see individuals of different skin complexions going back and forth with this hatred and this dislike for one another. And the thing about it is the enemy is so crafty. And it's not anything new, but it truly is divide and conquer. And so why even have this discussion? Because I've come to see it, and I see it time and time again, day in and day out. And I'm just like, really? You have individuals who say, look, racism is wrong, and you shouldn't treat a particular person this way. You shouldn't have negative things to say about them, simply for one, because of the way you were born. We have no control. We have no control over that. But in taking the stance, I can take a stance all day and say, you have a mindset as though you're better than me because your complexion is different. That's ignorance. That's bigotry. But then if I then turn around and begin to spew the same hatred, the same rhetoric against you based on that same standard, how does that make me any better? How does that not put me in the same position as you? How does that absolve me of what the word has said when it says, but if you show partiality, you are committing sin? And so this is the problem, that when we say that we are so against something, but in that passion to speak out against it, in that passion to want to change things, for some individuals, they inevitably become exactly what they claim to despise. And so this is my thing. I love the skin that I'm in. I love the skin that I'm in. God has made me fearfully. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and it's not going to change, and I don't feel bad about it. I'm not going to shrink back for anyone. But at the end of the day, also, my allegiance is not to my skin color. First and foremost, I'm a child of the Most High God. That's where my identity comes from. It doesn't come from being a black woman. No, I'm made in the image of God, and God, in fearfully and wonderfully making me, decided that I was going to be a lovely complected black woman who was going to do amazing things. And in my time of walking in the skin that I have encountered bigots and belligerent people from all shades, colors, creeds. And so I'm wanting to bring awareness to people, like, we don't judge by the outward appearance. Get the chance to know the person. What's in your heart? Because I've had people who look like me who wouldn't lift a finger to help me. I have people who look like me who we have become the best of friends and partners. I have people who don't look like me who would go above and beyond to lend a helping hand. And I've also had those who don't look like me, who, if I was not in my right state of mind, if I wasn't in a place to be grounded and understand how the enemy works, that I could have put myself in a position to not be where I am today. I could have put myself in a position to disrupt God's plan and purpose. But it gets to that point of truly understanding what's behind it. Sometimes we are so caught up in attacking the person that we don't understand that this is a spiritual warfare. And the enemy uses people as pawns to fulfill his purpose, to disrail people, to distract people, to put people in positions where they lose their inheritance to the kingdom or never find it to begin with. But we have to do better. We have to do better, because it doesn't matter how much money you have. Your money doesn't make you better than a person. It doesn't matter your prestige. It doesn't matter if you live in a mansion and someone else stays in a small home. These things do not matter. We begin to get focused on these things that when it's all said and done, they're not even existent. They're not even palatable things that are going to have any effect or say when our life on this side of heaven ends. But these are the very things that are ruling us and moving us, and we are hindering ourselves from becoming great. We are limiting ourselves from amazing opportunities because we are so focused on the outward appearance. Or we begin to attribute what someone else has done of a particular, race, creed, economic status, and then we attribute it to everybody in that spirit. And it's like, that's not right. Like, if you don't want someone to look at you and say, oh, she has this type of personality characteristic, this is how she lived based on this person I encountered 4 or 5 years ago who had those same similar characteristics. We begin to stereotype and place people in the box. And what we do is we truly hinder sometimes having really great connections with people. Or in this age of social media, we begin to say things simply because we want to get the likes and the shares and we want to be social media famous. But we don't understand the underlying negative impact. We don't understand the seeds that we're actually planting in ourselves that begin to grow root and begin to grow and continue to develop this partiality that we're discussing. That you look at something, you say, oh, this is ugly. And then if you just take some time and begin to evaluate your own words, your own, your actions, your deeds, what you're becoming the exact ugliness that you claim that you don't like, that you claim to despise. We have to be careful of what we're allowing to be fed into us and what we're taking to run with. 2 wrongs do not make a right. Let me say it again. 2 wrongs do not make a right. And when we're talking about partiality and favoritism, we are, we're fallen people, and it sometimes it comes naturally. It comes naturally. But that's when we have to be intentional. We have to be conscious, and we have to say, okay, how do I circumvent this? How do I shield myself from this? How do I protect it? That way I show up to be the change that I want to see. I show up to be the change that I want to see. So when I'm wealthy, if someone comes and encounters me and you may not have the wealth that I have, you may not have the money that I have, that still doesn't make me better than you. It doesn't make me better than you. Real life example, I had this. When I meet with clients, and some of my clients, I deal in various areas of the law. And I do criminal defense. And I would go and I would meet with clients. And sometimes you can just tell like the demeanor. And I tell them, just because I sit on this side of this table does not mean that I'm any better than you. I just happen to be blessed to be in a position that I can serve you, but it doesn't make me better. Everyone is one decision away from being seated in the same position that you're in. And so even in that realm, judges are not better than the defendants. Judges are not better than the attorneys. You know, the attorneys are not better than the judge's staff. The attorneys aren't better than the defendants. The attorneys aren't better than the jurors who come in to fulfill their civic duty. You know, I'm trying to give these examples but it's applicable to every situation. It's applicable to those areas where favoritism is more likely to take place. It's applicable when we're talking about race. No race is better than the other. Blacks are not better than whites. Whites are not better than blacks or Hispanic, Asian, all those things. Nobody is better than the next person. But how do we get to this place as based on those things, those outer appearance, those things that people have no control over, we begin to despise or we begin to look down. It's pure wickedness. It's pure wickedness. Men are not better than women. Women are not better than men. But now we have this, you see it so often on social media where it seems as though it's this attack between men and women going back and forth. And it's like, people, do we not get to the point that we open our eyes and say, okay, what is really going on? What is the underlying thing right here? If everybody is divided, how can people stand? It's divide and conquer, but it's that understanding that this is truly a spiritual warfare. You're not fighting against flesh and blood, but we miss it. We're missing. I mean, even the media fuels some of these things. Political party. Oh my! Did y'all remember when I was talking about favoritism? It's like you got race, you got gender, economic status, political party, intelligence. But political party, oh my, especially in this season of the presidential election coming up, you see it already happening. People back and forth at each other's throats on social media because, oh, you're a Republican, I'm a Democrat. Oh, you're stupid. Oh, you're this. Complete hatred. How did we get to the point that we can't look at a person, another human being, and not have a desire at the minimum to just show a level of respect, even if you disagree, even if you don't look the same? Like, people, if we do not wake up, and when I tell you that I've encountered some bigots. But even in that encounter, what I didn't do is then begin to attribute that to every other person that I encountered who had similar characteristics. And just so we're clear, this is a definition of a bigot. A person who is obstinately or unreasonably attached to a belief, opinion, or faction, especially one who is prejudiced against or antagonistic toward a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular group. Okay, so I've encountered bigots, but even in that, I don't treat other people who may bear the same resemblance or characteristics of that individual. I don't treat them based on my experience with one or two, because we don't treat people based on the outward appearance. You need to take the time to get people to know their heart. And then when you encounter people like that, understand this. Rise above. Don't stoop down to other individuals' level and become. If you argue with a fool, guess what? You're going to look foolish. So if it's above you, then continue to stay at the level that you are. Sometimes you have encounters. It's truly to test you. It's truly to test you. Now, by no means am I saying that you allow someone to come and try to pose physical harm to you. By no means. But based on some words, evaluate if it's worth it. Evaluate if it's worth it. And I'll give a prime example. I had a client and he encountered an individual who was drunk, who was belligerent, and who was, making some racial slurs, really talking out the side of his neck. And it infuriated him. And he assaulted the guy. And we had to sit down and evaluate the case and just see what was going to be the game plan. But when you look at the laws, the thing is, words in and of itself don't give you the basis. It doesn't give you the basis to make physical contact. Now, at the end of the day, we worked the case out in a way that it was going to be dismissed, and so it worked out. But the thing is, that's not always the case for everybody. And so just be in those instances of being level-headed, not being emotionally led. Let's get to the place that we're not functioning from our emotions. For one, we function from what? The word of God. We let the word of God lead us and direct us. And not that it's always easy either. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's not easy, that when you hear the foolishness, you see the foolishness, that it doesn't move you in a way. But we aren't led by our emotions. We're not led by our feelings. We show no partiality. And we hold on to the faith. We hold on to what we believe. We know that no matter what we encounter, what we face, all things are going to work out for the good. Right? Nobody can hinder you. Nobody can hinder you. And don't allow people to put things on you and accept it. For one, you know who you are. No one can walk up to me and say, well, you don't deserve to be here because you're a black woman. You don't deserve to be here because you're this age. Either you're too old or you're too young. You don't deserve to be here for whatever reason. You can't tell me where I deserve to be because, for one, you're not the one that created any of this. You can't tell me where I'm entitled to be because you didn't place me here. And see, that's the thing. When we get to the place that we know who we are, what people have to say and what they think don't bother us. It doesn't bother us. I will tell you, in law school, one of the young ladies, we were close in school, and I mean, she was amazing one day, and this is early in, like, our first year, 1L year, and she was like, oh, well, you know that they gonna think that you're here because of affirmative action. And I truly, from the depths of my heart, was like, I don't care what these people think. I'm here on a full ride. I'm here on a scholarship. I don't care what you think. And this is the thing, when we begin to have that mindset, not in a cocky way, not in a prideful way, but when you understand, some of the foolishness begins to roll off your back. And you're able to see, like, it's not even worth me giving my attention to it. And then in that aspect, it's impossible for the enemy then to come and begin to sow those seeds of hatred and discord in you. And then you begin to do what? Become the same thing that you claim to despise. We have to rise above it. We truly have to rise above it. And it's truly possible. But this one was on me today because I'm seeing it so more prevalent right now, day in and day out. And it's like, look, and the thing about it, look, some people may not know. So you may listen to this podcast and be like, you want to know something? I was becoming a part of that. I do see that happening. And to be mindful and to do better. We all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. But we can begin to make the change and to be the change that we want to see, and not to entertain the foolishness. And we don't show favoritism towards others because Jesus is the Lord of all people. He created them all. So it doesn't matter their life circumstance. It doesn't matter economic status. It doesn't matter the political party that they claim to be a part of. None of those things matter. He's Lord of the rich and the poor. He's Lord of the black and the white. He's Lord of the educated and the uneducated. Jesus Christ is Lord of all. And he shows no partiality and offering salvation to any who come to him. So let us continue to be that shining light in the midst of the chaos, in the midst of the craziness. Let us be that shining light. And let us function as Christ functioned. Not being a respecter of persons. Your status doesn't change how I'm going to treat you. I'm always going to treat you in love. I'm always going to treat you in love. I'm not going to disrespect you because of in most situations that we encountered it, something you truly have no control over. But you take this, you apply it. If you're struggling with it, hey, pray and ask God to help you. We all have areas where we need help in. And if this is one of them, hey, lift it up to him. He's faithful to hear you and also answer. And if you all haven't already, head over to wisdomunleashed.org and sign up for the email list. And until we meet next week, you all have joined Wisdom Unleashed.